Like many young men his age, George Herbert Walker Bush was horrified at the attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941.
I think my reaction was the same as every other American's. We got to do something about this one.
So in June 1942, he answered the call to serve and enlisted in the U.S. Navy on the day he graduated from high school, which was also his 18th birthday. After 10 months of training, Bush became one of the youngest naval aviators flying the TBM Avenger torpedo bomber. He experienced air combat for the first time in the Pacific when he was assigned to Torpedo Squadron 51, or VT-51, aboard the carrier USS San Jacinto.
When you look back on it, it sounds so harrowing, and yet at that time we were all just doing our duty. We were young men in combat and doing what a lot of other young men were doing.
On June 19, 1944, Bush was flying a mission in the Mariana Islands when his plane lost fuel pressure, and he was forced to make a water landing while his aircraft was still loaded with bombs.
And I must confess to a certain anxiety about that even now, because I was afraid those depth charges might go off even though I had not armed them.
But Bush and the crew were uninjured and escaped to a life raft before the plane sank to the ocean floor. On September 2, 1944, Bush was flying against Japanese fortifications at Chichijima in the Bonin Islands.
Some way about halfway down the run I was hit, and you could feel the plane go push forward like that, up and forward, and then suddenly it was all engulfed in flames, and I finished my bombing run, but by the time I pulled out over the ocean, the plane was really burning.
Bush bailed out, but the other 2 men in his crew were killed. His parachute was damaged, but it slowed his plunge into the water. He survived in a rubber raft for 4 hours, while other American pilots protectively flew over him.
I remember being scared, and remember wondering what happened to the crewmen that were with me. That preoccupied a lot of my thinking.
Bush's rescue by the submarine SS Finback was documented in this remarkable film footage. He later rejoined his squadron on board the USS San Jacinto. But the deaths of his crew left a lasting impression and reinforced his values of courage, duty, and service for the rest of his life.
I feel a lot of that very clearly, even though it was many, many years ago.
In all, Bush flew 58 combat missions and received the Distinguished Flying Cross, 3 Air Medals, and the Presidential Citation for the USS San Jacinto. In 1966, Bush was elected for the first of 2 terms to the U.S. House of Representatives. His political star continued to rise as he served as ambassador to the United Nations and China, director of the CIA, and as vice president for 8 years under Ronald Reagan.
Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, George Herbert Walker Bush, do solemnly swear
I, George Herbert Walker Bush, do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully...
His presidency witnessed the fall of the Berlin Wall and reunification of Germany, issues which had remained unresolved since the end of World War II. Going back to Dwight Eisenhower, Bush was the last of a continuous line of World War II veterans who subsequently served as President of the United States. Through his association with Dr. Stephen Ambrose, the founder of the National WWII Museum, President Bush was an early and enthusiastic supporter. He attended the grand opening of the Pacific wing of the museum in 2001 and was unabashed in his praise for its mission. In honor of his long and distinguished service to our country, the museum presented him with the American Spirit Award in 2007. George Herbert Walker Bush was the personification of the American spirit. From his combat duty as the youngest pilot in the U.S. Navy to his election as the 41st President of the United States, President Bush honored his country and its citizens with his commitment and service. He died on November 30th, 2018, at the age of 94. He's buried alongside Barbara, his wife of 73 years, and their daughter Robin, at the George H.W. Bush Presidential Library in College Station, Texas.